So think about those areas that you have been humiliated in. Those are the exact areas that God wants to establish you in. Hey lovely people, I know that I've been gone for a short while, but between the holidays and traveling, it's just been hard to keep up. But I'm here, and I have a word of encouragement to share surrounding vindication. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope that it does bless you, and I hope that it's a on time word for where you are right now. So I vindication is one of those words that I know, I've heard, and I think I know what it is contextually, but it's been coming up so often recently that I went to go look it up, and it means, in simple terms, to prove something that has been said or done as right when other people have thought it's wrong. And I thought, how many times have we, in this time of moving in obedience and living according to what God has called you to, how many times have you been faced with situations that are completely different from what you expected, and people have looked at you like you're crazy, or they've talked about you, or they've mocked you, simply because they don't see what God is saying to you, or they don't see what God is doing in you. I feel like that's where a lot of people are right now, where they are seen as nobodies, where they are seen as failures, simply because the world does not understand what is being done in this moment. And two good examples that I can think of are Joseph and David. Joseph was told by God that he was going to rule, but then proceeds to live out a good chunk of his life in prison and as a slave. And people regarded him as a prisoner and as a slave, but he knew exactly what God had said to him, and he knew what God had been doing in him in that low place, so that when it was time to be promoted, when it was time for God to vindicate what was said to him, it was a shock. It just happened like this. He went from prisoner to prime minister, and it could be seen all across the whole of Egypt. Same with David. David was anointed as king, right? But then proceeds to run for his life, hide in caves, struggle for sustenance. He was most definitely not treated as king, but again, at the set time, at the right time, God pulled him out of that space and elevated him. And recently, what he's been sharing, his heart has been that of, establishing his name. He's been saying to me that his name is on the line, and that he wants to establish his name as the final authority in the lives of his people. He wants to show that his name, that once he says something, that's exactly what he will do for the glory of his name. And we see this in Isaiah 55:11, where he clearly states that when he says something, it does not return to him void. And then we go down to verse 13, and he says it's because of the glory of his name. So think about those areas that you have been humiliated in, the areas that you have seemed like a failure in. Think about those areas where things have not looked right. Those are the exact areas that God wants to establish you in. Those are the same areas that God wants to vindicate you in for the glory of his name. And so, if this applies to you if you have been one that has been living in obedience, and you've been one that has been hanging on to his word, even if it's just by a thread. If you have been hanging on to his word and you have been trusting him and you have been living for him, then understand that this word is for you, and that you will begin to see his hand mightily in your life, because he wants to show off his glory, because he wants to establish the glory of his name. So I pray that you just let this word get into you, get into your heart, get into your spirit, and allow it to just build that confidence that you need to keep pushing forward, because he says that what he's about to do, eyes have not seen and ears have not heard, and it is going to be beautiful.